Good morning, Morai Rabotai, Bruchim Abayim. We are continuing on Masechet Makkot, and we are on Daf Yud Amud Bet, 9 lines up from the bottom of the Amud. Today's Amud is being learned. Lischut Refuah Shelema of Rachel Simcha Bat Nahid, that should have a full recovery, and for the Neshama of Esther Bat Naftali Tzvi Levi. Today's Amud is also sponsored by Dayan family, Kohen family, and Shea families. There should be an ultimate zchut for their families as well. We are now discussing the last piece of the Gemara before the next Mishnah, the 3 different ramifications of what the Ziknei Ha'ir, the elders of the city, would mean in Psukim in the Torah. In other words, in Are Miklat, it says that the person would speak to Ziknei Ha'ir, the Rotzeach B'Shogeg would talk to Ziknei Ha'ir, and the Gemara says that perhaps a city that doesn't have Ziknei Ha'ir, doesn't have Zekenim, it cannot become Ir Miklat. So says the Gemara, Itmar, it was said in the Bet Midrash, Ir she'en ba zekenim, Rab Ami v'Rab Asi chad amar koletet, v'chad amar ena koletet. The machloket between the 2 Gdolim of Eretz Yisrael, Rab Ami v'Rab Asi, one said that it could become an Ir Miklat, the other one said it cannot become an Ir Miklat. Lemanda amar ena koletet, according to the Manda amar that said that it can't be an Ir Miklat. Says the Gemara, Ba'inan Ziknei Ha'ir, Veleka, we need to have Ziknei Ha'ir, elders of the city, because it says that the fellow would go speak to Ziknei Ha'ir, and that indicates that without Ziknei Ha'ir, you don't have one of the elementary basic needs of Are Miklat. It has to have elders, it has to have Ziknei Ha'ir for it to be an Ir Miklat, and you don't have that, you can't be Ir Miklat. Lemanda Amar Koletet. What does the other Manda Amar do with that? Says the Gemara, mitzvah be'alma. It's only a mitzvah min muvchar. It's good to have it. It's a mitzvah to have it. But if you don't, it's not me'akev. It does not stop the process. So says the Gemara, on that theme, ve'ir she'em baskenim, another machloket Rav Ami v'Rav Asi is a city that doesn't have zekenim. Rav Ami v'Rav Asi, Chad Amar Na'asa Ba Ben Soreru More. Chad Amar En Na'asa Ba Ben Soreru More. Can you have a parasha of Ben Soreru More? In other words, the Torah says if you have a child, it's right below the bar mitzvah age, and he is doing theft, and he is eating and drinking alcohol, and eating large amounts of meat, drinking large amounts of alcohol, very negative, doesn't listen to the parents, and then and says the pasuk, they take him to Zikneiro. The parents would take him to the elders of the city. So says the Gemara, Lemanda Amar Enasaba Ben Soreru More, the one who says that the city cannot have a Ben Soreru More, because Ba'inan Zikneiro Veleka, we need Zikneiro, and we don't have it because it says V'tafsubo aviv imo v'otziuto el Zikneiro v'shar mekomo. And the parents would take this kid and would take him to the elders of his city. So says the Gemara, according to one Manda Amar, if the city doesn't have Zekenim, then you don't have Ben Soreru. Now, it happens to be that in the 8th parak of Sanhedrin, the Gemara there says that perhaps Ben Soreru never happened, actually. It's for the conceptual things that you learn from it, because a lot of requirements. This is just one simple one, but it has to be also the mother and father have to have the same exact voice, and they have to be in amazing state of shalom bayit, and all of those. It's hard to find a family like that which would end up with a kid like this, and so on and so forth. The Gemara says, according to one mandama, it never happened, and it's certainly a rare happening. But another requirement for that, according to Rav Ami or Rav Asi, would be you have to have elders of the town. conceptually, if you want a hashkafic point, well, in theme that we have explained about Arei Miklat being a sanctuary of rehabilitation system, that these criminals, or people, it's not really full criminals, but people who have fallen, b'shogeg even accidentally, will go there for rehabilitation. You have to have a town that could look up to elders, to leaders. If you have a town that has no leaders, if you have a town that ish kol hayashar be'einav ya'aseh, everyone minds their own business, there's nobody that they look up to, there's nobody that they follow. And again, this is very much alive, even without killing b'shogeg. Even in 2024, you have a family that looks up to their role model, a individual that looks up to his role model. They have a pattern of action, a pattern of life. It's part of rehabilitation. It's a part of having a successful life, and that's what the Gemara over here is saying as well. And you could explain that with Ben Sorer Umore as well, according to the Mandamar. That never happened. It's just for you to learn from it. One of the things that the Torah is teaching you is parents have to have the same voice. That means they have to be giving the same message. If the father is frum and the mother is not frum, or they have major debates and disagreements, they don't have the same voice, they don't have a united front, then what do you expect from the kid? That's the Chaim Shmulevitz and famous Baalei Musar, what they say in the Gemara in Sanhedrin. In line with that, you could say also, when the family has Ziknei Yiro, when the family has someone to look up to, they have a Rav, they have a More Derech, a More Hora'ah, that the kid knows that there's a hierarchy, there's a system, the father, the mother, they ask their questions to somebody. That sense of authority and subordination to authority is something that is beneficial for the kid as well. But Bida, as it made, the Gemara says, the first wide line, Ve'ir she'en baskenim, third and final machloket of Rab Asi and Rab Ami, is about a third scenario in which the Chumash says the zekenim are needed. Chad amar mevi'a egla arufa, v'chad amar ena mevi'a egla arufa. One of them says the egla arufa applies there in that city, and the other one says it doesn't. Now, what's the story of Egla Arufa? If you find a corpse that has been murdered out in the open, outside the city, and nobody knows who killed him, you see a person that's been shot, and it's outside city, in the middle of the wilderness, what do you do with it? The Gemara says, the Chumash rather says, that you find out what's the closest city to that corpse, and the zikenim of that city, they come with the whole process of the Levim. They come with a whole process of basically saying that this is not something that they fell short of not supporting this person if he was a guest in their town. There's a lot to be said. The Rambam writes about this, how accompanying someone, supporting someone emotionally even, would be so important, and that's why the Zekanim would have to come and say, well, we didn't see, our hands are clean from this blood, we did not spill the blood of this fellow. The Gemara asks, it says, what, we think that the Zekanim, the Sanhedrin of the city, killed this person? No, what it means is, we did not send him off without proper escort, without proper emotional support, without sending him with some food, because if he had the emotional support, he would not get into this type of situation. So a whole lot of hashkafic points in this, tucked away in this Gemara over here in Makkot, Daf Yud Amud Bet. But nevertheless, they would bring in egla, a calf, and they would be headed next to a river. Whole process of egla arufa, and that requires, says Rab Ami or Rab Asi, also ziknei ha'ir, the elders of the city. So if you don't have elders of the city, that city would not bring Egla Arufa, and the other Mandamar disagrees with it and holds that it does bring Egla Arufa, because when the Torah says Ziknei Ha'ir, it's only le mitzvah. If you have the elders come. If not, the most important people come. It's not going to be Ma'akev, you don't stop the process of Egla Arufa just because you didn't find Zekenim in that city. So says the Gemara, Lemanda Amar Mevi'ah Egla Arufa mitzvah be'alma. Middle of the last line, Amar Rab Chama bar Chanina, Mipnei ma ne'emra parashat rotzchim belashon, Aza, why is the parasha of Rotzchim, the parasha of the accidental murder and Arei Miklat, why is it said in this strong language? What does that mean? So you need a little background for this. If you study Sefer Yehoshua, you see whenever HaKadosh Baruch Hu speaks to Yehoshua, it's with a very soft language. Vayomer Hashem el Yehoshua. Now we know that Amira is Lashon Rakaya. Amira is a soft language. Vaidaber Dibur is a strong, firm language. Right? That's why we have it by Matan Torah as well. Right? Kotomar lebet Yaakov taged livnei Israel. Speak softly with the woman. Taged livnei Israel with Bnei Israel. You're more firm. In the Torah we have Vaidaber all the time. That's the regular speech of HaKadosh Baruch Hu to Moshe Rabbeinu when giving, transmitting the mitzvot. It's always Vaidaber Hashem el Moshe lemor. Right? That's the firm, when you talk about the mitzvot, it's a firm language of Vaidaber, right? Not necessarily that it is a negative strength, but it is a firm language of Vaidaber Hashem. In Sefer Yehoshua, you don't have it at all. It's all Vayomer Hashem El Yehoshua, aside from one. There is one exception to that rule in the entire Sefer Yehoshua, and that is this. When Hashem speaks to Yehoshua about the appointment of the remainder of the 6 cities of refuge, we mentioned before in the previous daf, that Moshe Rabbeinu, right before he passed away, he already set up the 3 that were supposed to be in Ever HaYarden, eastern side of the Jordan River. He already set them up, he appointed them, he separated them, and they were good to go. Of course, they were not operational until after the conquest and the division of Eretz Yisrael, but Moshe Rabbeinu already had set them apart. Now, Yeshua had to set apart the other 3 of the 6. When Hashem tells him to do it, is Vaidaber Hashem and Yehoshua, and that's the only exception. So, of course, when you're Baki in Sefer Yehoshua, which, of course, all the Tanaim and Amoraim were, say, Mashna, why is this language different than the entire language chosen in Sefer Yehoshua? And it's said in the firm and strong language, says the Gemara, Dichtiv, as it says, Vaidaber Hashem el Yehoshua lemor, Daber el bnei Yisrael lemor, tenu lachem et arei hamiklat asher dibarti alechem. Speak to Bnei Israel to set apart and give away from now conquered lands of Eretz Yisrael. They should give away those 3 cities that I mentioned to Moshe prior to the entrance and the conquest of the land. So says the Gemara, Mipnei she'en shel Torah, is because it's a continuation of the last mitzvah of the Torah that was left over, that was not actualized in the time of Moshe Rabbeinu's leadership. So the remnants of the Torah mitzvah, which would have been said in Lashon Vaidaber Hashem el Moshe lemor, now it's said in the same language, just to Yehoshua, Vaidaber Hashem el Yehoshua lemor, in the way that it would have been said in the Torah, because it is a mitzvah of the Torah, is the only remnants of what Moshe Rabbeinu did not do, and therefore it is taking on the language that would have been used in the Torah.
Isn't conquering the land also the tzivui for Yeshua to do?
Yeah, but you didn't have to do the tzivui necessarily in that way. Even though that according to the Ramban, the conquest of Eretz Yisrael is a mitzvah daseh. He actually disagrees with, Ramban wrote a list of mitzvot that he disagrees with the Rambam. Rambam counted in Sefer HaMitzvot, counts the 613 mitzvot according to his understanding. The Gemara says there are 613 mitzvot. Well, there are many more mitzvot d'oraita than 613. Right? Not bursting anyone's bubbles with that. Right? I don't realize is that you have a lot of mitzvot. For instance, the Gemara says Yichud is, the Gemara in Kiddushin, Pei Amud Bet, the Gemara says that Yichud, well, several places, Sanhedrin, Avodah, that Yichud is Misad Deoraita. According to the majority of the Rishonim, it is Deoraita. But it's not counted as one of the 613. There are many mitzvot like that are Deoraita, but are not counted as the number of 613. And Rambam has 14 Shorashim explaining that. But nevertheless, Rambam counts his 613, and Ramban goes through them and disagrees with some of them. He takes out some, he puts In some that the Rambam didn't count. So in the mitzvot that Ramban rather wrote a list, he calls them mitzvot shechachan harav. The mitzvot that Rambam forgot to count, right? It's like a nice way of saying it. In mitzvah Aseh Dalit, the fourth positive mitzvah, the Ramban writes that the conquest and settlement of meaning settling the land and conquering the land of Eretz Yisrael, mitzvah Aseh Doraita, even nowadays without the Beit HaMikdash, still would be considered a mitzvah in that way, but still, that is something that the process was started, and it was not necessarily a command that you find HaKadosh Baruch Hu telling Yeshua. That was the underlying, the first thing that Yeshua had to do, and you find the Shvatim, Yeshua speaking to different Shvatim and heads of Shvatim to do their part in the conquest of the land, but it's not something like this. So says the Gemara, and the Gemara says, wait a second, you want to suggest that every time that the Tanakh speaks about Dibur, it's a firm, strong language? It's a strong language? Dichtiv, it says, the Gemara says, yes, it is. Dichtiv, as it says, Diber Aish Adonai Haaretz Itanu Kashot. How do I know? Because when the Shvatim and the sons of Yaakov are reporting back to Yaakov Avinu after their first visit to Mitzrayim, not knowing that the viceroy of Mitzrayim is their own very brother Yosef, they come back and they say, Diber Aish Adonai Haaretz Itanu Kashot. The master of the land that we dealt with spoke to us very strongly. Dibur Lashon Kashe. Diber Itanu Kashot. We see that clearly from the language of the Pasuk. Gemara says, wait a second. Hatanya, we learned in a Braita, Nidberu and Nidberu ela Lashon Nachat. Nidberu, which sounds like Dibur also, is Lashon Nachat. It is a language of calm and composure. It's beautiful. It's not strong. Vechenu Omer, as the Pasuk says, this is, by the way, this is a pasuk. He just says, the Braita just brings one word of the pasuk, is Aznit beru yireh Hashem ishel rehu, the full pasuk in the side. Aznit beru yireh Hashem ishel rehu vayachshev Hashem vayishma v'yikatev sefer zikaron lefanav le'yireh Hashem u'choshvei shemo. The yireh Hashem, the God-fearing individuals, they will be speaking amongst themselves. The Braita says that's a lashon nachat. Not only it's not kasher, but it's a very pleasant, calm way of speaking. So that kind of like is a checkmate. You have a Braita that says exactly the opposite. And says the Gemara, not only that, and the Pasuk says, Yadber amim tachtenu. Hashem will subordinate the nations under us, which would mean, Yadber means there will be, not that we will be in control, but it means that they will be calm with us. There will be, in an easy way with us, the peace and tranquility amongst the nations of the world when in relation with us. That's also Lashon Nachat. So says the Gemara, no, Daber lechud, Yadber lechud. When the Torah speaks about a command in the language of Dibur, by Daber Hashem and Moshe lemor, by Daber Hashem and Yehoshua lemor, that is a strong language. But Yadber Amim Tachtenu, that's like not talking about speech, it's talking about subordination. Even Nidberu is Lashon Pual, it's a different language, it's not a language of tzivui and command, so therefore it's not a question on what we said before. The suggestion of the Gemara prior stands strong, that whenever you have Vaidaber Hashem, or the language of Dibur as speech and commandment, is a strong language. So says the Gemara, Rabbi Yehuda v'Rabbanan, Chad Amar mipenei sheshiham v'chad Amar mipenei she'en shel Torah. So we gave an answer already, that the reason that it says Vaidaber Hashem el Yehoshua, the only time that says Lashon Dibur by Yehoshua, is because it's remnants of the Torah. But says the Gemara, that's only one mandamar. There's another mandamar that holds is because Hashem was being very strong with Yehoshua. He was not happy with him. Why? Because whereas we mentioned by Moshe Rabbeinu, Moshe jumped to grab this mitzvah even though that it was not going to be effective before his death, but Chacham Lev Yikach Mitzvot, he grabbed onto a tail of a mitzvah as soon as he can. Yeshua did exactly the opposite. Yeshua, after the conquest of the land was completed, did not right away separate the Arei Miklat, and he waited until Hashem had to tell him, Yalla, I told Moshe Rabbeinu to do it. What are you waiting for? What? And therefore, when he actually tells it to him, he says it to him in Lashon Kasha, because he was shohet mitzvah. He did not do it right away. We have the general rule of the mitzvah is mitzvah ba'alei yadecha al tachmetzena. We don't make them chametz. You do it right away when you have the opportunity of the mitzvah, as we had in the previous daf. So therefore, that's why Lashon Kasha, the language that's strong, has been chosen for this. Vaychtov Yeshua et hadvarim ha'ele b'sefer Torat Elokim. Now there is another, once we are at it, to scrutinize and analyze the psukim of Yeshua, there's another part that needs really a question and answer, and that is, the pasuk says, Yeshua wrote these words in Sefer Torat Elokim. He wrote these topics in the book of Torat Elokim, which, it's a pretty strong language, sounding like he wrote some of the psukim of the actual Torah scroll, the actual Torah, right? Proper, not the Nach, not his own Sefer, right? So what in the world did he write in Sefer Torah Elokim? I thought Moshe Rabbeinu katav sifro, right? The Gemara in Baba Batra, Daf Tetvav, says Moshe katav sifro, Parshat Bil'am, right? Moshe Rabbeinu wrote the Sefer Torah. So says the Gemara, Pligi ba Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Nechemia. It's machloket Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Nechemia. Chad amar shemona psukim, vechad amar arei miklat. One of them says is 8 psukim. The other one says a parsha of arei miklat. What does that mean exactly? So the Gemara explains. Bishlam the manda amar chet psukim. Haynu dichtiv b'sefer Torat Elokim. There is a Manda Amar in the Gemara, the end of Masechet Sotah, in also the Gemara right there in Masechet Batra, Daf Tetvav, that the last 8 psukim of the Chumash was written by Yeshua. What prompts this topic? Because the pasuk, the 8th pasuk before the end of the entire Chumash, Pashat V'zot HaBracha, starts with Vayamot Moshe Evet Hashem. Moshe died. Who wrote that? If Moshe died, who wrote the pasuk? Right? It's 8 psukim. So one Mandamar there in the Gemara says Yeshua wrote them. The other Mandamar says Moshe Rabbeinu wrote them. Hashem would dictate to him. Moshe kotev bedema, and Moshe, as tears falling off his face, he's writing the future of his own, after death, so to speak, before he actually passed on. So that's the machloket in the Gemara over there. So the 8 psukim, the Mandamar says is the 8 psukim that he wrote, and the other one says it's the parasha of Arei Miklat, which the second half of it is written in Sefer Yoshua. Not that he wrote the parasha of Arei Miklat in the Chumash, but he wrote parasha of Arei Miklat in his own Sefer Yoshua. So says the Gemara, Arei Miklat, my beSefer Torat Elokim. If you say he wrote the parasha of Arei Miklat in Sefer Yoshua, why does the pasuk say he wrote these matters in the Torah of Hashem? It's not in Torah of Hashem, it's in Sefer Yoshua. Says the Gemara, don't read it like that. Hachikamar. You have to read it like this. Yeshua wrote in his own Sefer these topics that are really in Torat Elokim. The only piece of Sefer Yeshua that really should have been in Torat Elokim is this topic of Arei Miklat. And the Gemara is going to now discuss the last discussion before the Mishnah, whether or not a Sefer Torah, which is sewed up with different material, is kasher or not, and it's going to be really related to this, which is a fascinating topic we're going to discuss it in days to come. Chazak Baruch.